Thank you very much, Patreon gang. Big up, big time, Styley.
Hello, my name is Jake, and today I'm going to be showing you how to go from a casual shaman enjoyer to a hardcore shaman enthusiast with just a few simple steps. Step 1, positioning. Step 2, totems. You can't be feared now. Step 3, huge amounts of damage. You can learn all this and more at the Academy of Shaman Supremacy. Sign up now. What's up gamers, it's TreeSap Jake here with yet another video, and today's video is one I'm very excited for. It is my 9.1 Shadowlands PvP guide for Elemental Shaman. Now, as you may have noticed, there's no camera today. Unfortunately, my camera is just not syncing with my voice. So I thought instead of me being totally out of sync, I'll put something fun there instead. But anyway, let's get cracking into this. This guide is perfect for anyone that's looking to start, like beginners, even intermediates, and even those who are sort of really know Elemental Shaman and just want to get back in there and kind of get a feeling of what you want to play going forwards in this new season. Obviously, I'm going to touch on a lot of things. I'm going to be talking about talents, PvP talents. I'm going to be talking about soulbinds, covenant choices, legendaries, comps, and I'm also going to be giving you some tips and tricks. Hopefully that will help you to get started. So let's get cracking. So what you see before you right now is my talents. Pretty much for my talents, this is my go-to. This is what I'll always take in pretty much every single situation. Now, I've talked about them in depth in my original Shaman guide, in my 9.0 in-depth Elemental Shaman guide. So if you really want to check that out and kind of hear everything I have to say about the talents and why I choose which ones, please go check that out. It should be up on the screen now so you can see what the thumbnail is to go click on that. I'll also put a link down in the description below. So this is where I'm kind of going for my standard build-up. I'd probably switch things here and there depending on what I want to do. So maybe I'll go for Earthen Rage depending on if I'm in a 2s match or if I'm a 3s match. Sometimes it's just easier to go for Earthen Rage because I'm not often going to get the Lava Burst out, so this is just consistent damage. I played around with Spirit Wolf. I can see where it might be useful, but I'm not a massive fan. I will probably always go for Earth Shield over Spirit Wolf. I think spending your time in Ghost Wolf is just waste of time. It's just another global to get out and do damage. I'd much rather go and just stick with Earth Shield. The healing potential is really good, and obviously the bonus healing when compared with certain conduits can also be really good. I know a lot of people have tried using Surge of Power. I'm not a massive fan. I don't think it's that great. I think Primal Elementalist is too strong, especially at the minute where melee damage is huge. So this is what I prefer to play. And that's pretty much everything for the talents. As I said, if you want to know more, please go check out the original guide. Let's move swiftly on to the PvP talents. Now, the PvP talents for Elemental Shaman I've been the most excited for. They have made the gameplay of Elemental Shaman in PvP at least so much better. It actually feels really enjoyable. As you know from my original guide, or if you haven't seen my original guide, I'm letting you know now. The changes from BFA to Shadowlands made Elemental Shaman really fun to play. Like it just feels so much better. As a class, I really enjoy it. So the PvP talents have made it even better to play Elemental Shaman in PvP. I want to talk quickly about Lightning Lasso. This is one of the talents that I'd say, the PvP talents that I say you have to stick with always. You'll never be switching Lightning Lasso ever. It just has to stay. It's just too strong an ability. It gets you out of so much trouble. I know you've been kicked, but it's just being able to move and stun somebody and keep them locked down is just perfect for Shaman, especially allowing you to reposition yourself. It's just perfect, and I think this is the one that will never change. The next one I want to talk about is Controller Lava. Now, this is a new PvP talent. It's an amazing talent, and I love it so much, and it has so much synergy with a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about, a lot of the changes I'm going to be talking about for Elemental Shaman, and I just love this ability so much. So Flame Shock's damage occurs 15% more, so that means that's more damage, that's more ticks, which means just you're just pumping out a lot more damage from Flame Shock, and if it is dispelled, a volcanic eruption wells up beneath the dispeller, exploding for 6.5k fire damage and knocking them into the air. Obviously this scales with gear, so the more gear you've got, the more fire damage it does. I'd also like to note this is an AoE fire damage, so let's say you've got 3 people behind the pillar, the healer dispels 1, it knocks all 3 of them up and they all take that damage. I don't believe it's split, they all take that damage, and obviously they're all disruptors, so if they're casting stuff, off heals, whatever, that knocks them up. So it's a really, really useful ability. The dispel can also crit from up to 11 to 12k. It does a lot, obviously, so that synergizes with crit as well. It's just an amazing ability to have dispel protection, mostly because flame shocks are always being dispelled when you're playing arena, and this kind of basically allows you to pump a load of damage if they are dispelled, and makes healers wary of when they're doing it. It also is affected by Paladin Judgment, so when Paladin Judgment dispel, that knocks them up as well, so it's quite useful for when obviously they're trying to chase you and doing range damage. They get stopped in their tracks, which is quite useful, allowing you to reposition or at least put a slow on them maybe. Things it does also work with is the dispel magic from monks, so when monks use that, it does knock them in the air. I don't know if the damage is reduced because it happens immediately, but it definitely stops them from moving if they use dispel magic. The things it doesn't affect though, I believe, are Cloak, for example, when you get rid of Cloak, and also the Hunter Feign Death if they're playing the specific talent. I believe that also doesn't affect them, so it's slightly difficult against Hunters, but it doesn't matter anyway because it still pumps a lot of damage. The next slot can be anything. Now this is the one where it's versatile. I'd love for all of the PvP talents to be versatile because then you can switch out whatever, but the first two are important. The Grounding Totem here is what I normally take. This is against any spellcaster. Any spellcaster, whether it's RMP or Wizard's Cleaves or anything else like that, I always take Grounding Totem because you just need to be able to stop damage. You need to be able to rotate your kick and your Grounding Totem, and you can pretty much sort of stop most goes. This is mostly important for mind games and things like that really affect you, because obviously you may not be aware of this, but if you get mind games on you, it can proc your Nature's Guardian. So this is when your health is below 35% health, you instantly heal for 20% of your maximum health. That can tick for the Mind Games, which does a lot of damage, almost up to 10k damage, so that's a lot. Obviously on top of everything else that happens, so you got to be mindful. Stopping Mind Games is very important for Shaman. But if you're going against a double melee cleave or something else, there are a few options that you can go for. The one that I like the most is Static Field Totem. Now this doesn't DR, there is no sort of like knockout effect like there is with Thunderstorm and the Vortex from the Resto Druid or Druids in general. Static Field Totem, you can knock and also Static Field Totem them, and they'll be bounced around. It doesn't count as a knockback at all. It's simply just a ring in which people can't get through, and it's a very, very good ability. It lasts for 6 seconds, and the totem itself is kind of comparable to the new Scyfiend. It does take quite a few hits. Obviously, if double melee slap into it, it's going to die very quickly, but the main thing is if you get them in the right place, it can knock them back. It's just a really good totem, and this is the thing I would go for if I wasn't taking Grounding Totem. Most of the time, I'll be playing Grounding Totem and Static Field Totem. The other things that you could go for is Unleash Shield. I'm not a massive fan of it, but it's a really cool idea. I think most Resto Shamans would take this. Earth Shield roots them in place for 3 seconds, and Lightning Shield knocks them away. Lightning Shield, I don't believe, DRs with your Thunderstorm as well, so DR is diminishing returns, just in case you didn't know that. The only problem with this is that it removes the shield from you, so it doesn't keep the shield on. If it kept the shield on, this would be amazing, but you have to reapply the shield on yourself and you root them. It can be dispelled, obviously, so I'm not a massive fan of this, but it's an option if you want to play it. I think it can be useful in certain situations. I won't be taking Skyfury anymore. It gets killed too often. You could probably play it situationally, but there's too many other things that you'd want to take that make Shaman so much more enjoyable to play. The only other one I'd consider playing is Seasoned Winds. Seasoned Winds, interrupting a spell with Wind Shear decreases your damage taken from that spell school by 15% for 12 seconds. Your Wind Shear is also on a 12-second cooldown. You can pretty much lock out the same spell group, consistently throughout an arena and get 15% less damage from it. Let's say you kick fire on cooldown against a fire mage, he's doing 15% less damage to you or whoever at that point. It's very situational, it depends on the target. I'm not massive. I think it's still good, but I probably wouldn't take it. This is probably more of a 2's ability to take if, let's say you're against a rogue mage, you want to take Grounding Totem and you don't need Control of Lava, you just take Seasoned Winds and you kick fire, or you kick frost or whatever, and you take less damage. It's pretty useful during Combust. But that's the only time I'd see it situationally be taken. So the next thing I want to talk about is Covenants and Soulbinds. Now, I believe that Necrolord is still the best for Elemental Shaman going into 9.1. I think it's just so much synergy with Flame Shock and how Primordial Wave works. I think it's just such a great Covenant to use and just feels so great to play. I think you could probably go Night Fae as well, but I think the big suck in that Fey Transfusion idea that you may have seen from those sort of one-shots, it's very situational, and I don't think it's great to play, and I think it's reliant on other things. I just think everything synergizes way more with Necrolord and makes it feel just 90 times better to play Elemental Shaman. So obviously if you want to know more about the Necrolord Covenants, I talk about them in depth in my in-depth Elemental Shaman guide for Shadowlands, so please do go check that out. So I'm just going to crack on and talk about Soulbinds. I still think the best Soulbind is Plague Deviser Marileth for multiple reasons. I think the tree is just too good. I think Ultimate Form is great, and I also think the last point when we get to the highest renown or renown 55 or whatever, is just too good and makes PvP amazing. So I'll start from the beginning. I have gone through this all before, but just as a FYI, Volatile Solvent has changed ever so slightly. So now that when you enter the arena, when you use Fleshcraft and that's on cooldown, the essence it absorbs is your own. So you get the humanoid one, so you get a bit of mastery, about 160-ish mastery, which is enough. It gives you more chance for overloads, so overloads on Lightning Bolt, overloads on Lava Burst. Again, it's more consistent damage, it's multiple machine gun stuff, so it's very, very useful for your just general consistent damage. So it's just something there. Also, Fleshcraft now has versatility involved, so with the high versatility, you get a bit of a bigger shield, which is very useful, means that Fleshcraft is quite a useful ability, shield-wise, etc. I'll go into some tips and tricks about that later on, that should hopefully help you as well going forward. But this is my general setup. I want to prioritize Call of Flame. I think Fire Ellie being up higher works with all the synergy that I'm going to be talking about when I get to the legendaries, but just it being out for 44% longer at the 252 potency conduit is just nuts. It does a lot of damage. It's very consistent damage, especially if they're out in the open and obviously you're not the target and melee are on someone else, then it's perfect. Going down, Ooze's Frictionless Coating is just way too good. It's such a good maximum health shield. Obviously really synergizes with Vital Accretion, which is the next endurance conduit that I'm going to be talking about just below it. But obviously when you get below 50% health, 50% of your maximum health is a shield every 30 seconds is nuts. It really can save you. Stacks with Vital Accretion, so obviously if you've got Earth Ellie out and you dip below 50% health, your 15% maximum health shield is quite a bit bigger, so this all works together. Very, very useful. Obviously also works with your Battle Master Trinket, so the trinket that increases your health, maximum health for a little while. Do remember though that your Battle Master Trinket can fall off, so the maximum health you fall will kind of make you dip lower, so just be mindful of that. Some of these other ones, it doesn't really matter which side you go, they're pretty much pointless. The one you want, the next potency conduit you want is Tumbling Waves. Primordial Wave has a 31% chance to not incur its cooldown. Regardless of whatever its cooldown is, this is too good. Being able to spread Flame Shocks is very useful for the spec we're going to be talking about, and it just makes life so much easier. Also, multiple different lava bursts going out at the same time, just being able to spread pressure and nail targets with machine guns is really good. Lava burst still hurts despite the 10% nerf that happened in 9.0.5, but it's still really good. So what I usually go here, this is where you have a bit more choice. It depends on what you want to do. This is my usual path. I'd want to go down the right hand side at the minute, so when obviously we're 55 renown, this is what I'll be doing. You go down the right hand side and I'll take Totemic Surge. I think Totemic Surge is really good. Obviously at this max point it reduces Tremor Totem, Earthbind Totem, Cap Totem by 9 seconds. You could also go Crippling Hex if you really want to, for example, stop melee cleaves. I think this is perfect for dealing with the melee cleaves. 12% damage reduction after Hex is really vital. Doesn't matter, even if it's dispelled, they still get that 12% reduction, or however much, depending on the conduit level. I think you can also go Thunderous Paws. If you're a target, if you're playing Thundercleave or something where the enemy is going you, this is perfect. Every sort of 60 seconds, you get a massive increase. You can kite really, really well. I think this is important for if you feel as if you're playing a comp where you are the target. Otherwise, I'd go for stuff like Totemic Surge and Crippling Hex. Especially Crippling Hex if you're playing Wizard Cleaves and you want to save, I don't know, your Warlock or your Mage. This is perfect for it. Obviously, Ultimate Form is the best one to go. You have any choice in that. It's just amazing for stopping CC and obviously giving you health and whatever. It's just too good. The next potency one is up to you. I prefer High Voltage because you get more chance to do, get Maelstrom, and more Maelstrom means more Earth Shocks, and Earth Shocks crit really hard. Obviously they are buffed, but you can do multiple different things. You could also do Swirling Current, so when you put down Healing Stream Totem, it increases the healing of your next 3 healing surges by 20%. Really good for off heals, and also healing yourself. I think you also do Pyroclastic Shock, but again, I don't think this is amazing. Or Embrace of Earth, I think is also a really good one. But to be honest, I think personally, High Voltage is the best one, just for more double Maelstrom, more Earth Shocks. This is great. And then I go down the left-hand side. This is something where if you get hit, there's a 70% slow puddle right next to you. I think that no one's seen this yet because we haven't got there. Obviously, it's on the PTR, but I think this will be really, really good as a way to sort of basically slow people when you haven't got Earthbind up, or obviously you get snared by warriors and stuff, but that slows them. It means you've got a chance to get away. I then go Refreshing Waters. Healing Surge is more effective on yourself. Really good for self-healing. But if you didn't want to do self-healing and you feel like you need something else, you could probably just go Condensed Anima Sphere just in case they do hit you. Everything else is just pointless. But I think Refreshing Waters is probably the best one. And then finally, Kevin's Oozling. This is really great. Primordial Wave summons Kevin's Oozling to fight alongside you for 16 seconds. His attacks cause your enemies to take 2% additional damage from you, and he periodically grants your allies an Absorb shield that absorbs spell power with versatility damage. That's very, very good. With Primordial Wave resetting, there's chances for Kevin to come out all the time, or sorry, Kevin's Oozling to come out all the time, as a way to basically increase the damage due to people and shields. This will be perfect for your comp and really help you against a lot of the melee as we get further and further into the Renown. Obviously, if you don't want to do this, if you want to go down the other side and you feel like you're the target and you feel like whilst above 80%, 5% of the damage taken is absorbed and spread over 5 seconds, I don't think it's worthwhile personally. But if you did feel like you wanted to do it, you just basically reverse it, put Refreshing Waters here, and then Totemic Surge down there where Thunderous pauses. I think that would work out well. And that's pretty much it for conduits. This is pretty much my go-to. The path that you see down now is what I'm going to be going when I'm full. At the minute, obviously, you know, I want to make sure that I've still got the Endurance conduit here, which I've got Refreshing Waters in. But when I get the one down here, then at Renown 51, then I will be swapping it around. But this is basically my go-to. Right, guys, so now I want to talk about legendaries. Now, there's a few legendary changes, and I'm going to talk about the synergy here that I think makes things work really, really well. If you are in and you know a lot about Elemental Shaman, you know what I'm going to be telling you. But if you don't and you have no idea, basically, before in 9.0, Wind Speakers was the best one because when we Earth Shocked, we got a big buffed Lava Burst. Then Lava Burst got nerfed, so Wind Speakers stopped being the main one that everyone wanted to go for, and we started moving towards Elemental Equilibrium as a way to get a lot of burst damage out. Now, the great thing about the Lava Burst nerf, and you're going to hate me saying this, those of you main Elemental Shaman and love Shaman like I do, is that it has allowed us to open up with what we can play. Instead of being one legendary only, we can play with multiple, which sucks because you have to do Torghast a lot, but it's also cool because you get multiple different ways of playstyle. So Elemental Equilibrium is really good. You just Echoing Shock, you get the increased damage on a lot of your burst, a lot of burst damage that comes out every 30 seconds. It's very good, synergizes with your Echoing Shock, and that's great, and so that's fine. You can still play Wind Speakers as well, very good for when you're playing Thunder, and you're playing into certain melee and you just need to get some damage out whilst people kite and whatever. It's very good. I think it's also very good twos legendary, allows you to sort of just get some damage out if you need to. But the main one that we're going to talk about is Skybreaker's Fiery Demise. Flame Shock damage over time, critical strikes reduce the cooldown of your fire elemental by 1 second. That's every time it does a critical strike. And Flame Shock has a 50% increased critical strike chance. Paired with control of lava, Primordial Wave having a chance to not have a cooldown, you get a lot of spread, and that's a lot of damage. Also, I'll talk about stats as well. I won't forget this time, guys. I won't forget. We're talking about stats. But having a lot of haste as well means the ticks go much faster. Let's say you do 80 ticks of Flame Shock, about 44 of those tends to be a critical strike from what I can see. And I think this is awesome. It means that you have a shorter time on Fire Elemental, so that big damage buff comes out, and also your Flame Shock just hit like a truck. It's your top damage. It's really nice, and that sort of like spread is really good. So either the Flame Shock does its work, or they dispel it and they get hit by a volcanic eruption that can crit them for 12k. It's really, really awesome, and it's so nice. It just feels like you've got a lot more Lava Surges to work with, and just the playstyle is very good. The other alternatives you can go for, and you can still play Controller Lava with these, but there are other alternatives you can go for. Obviously, you could also do Earthen Harmony there if you feel like you really need to off-heal. Earth Shield healing is nuts, and this really, really helps. So let's say you're playing LSD and you're really struggling, your Warlock's really struggling to keep up. This could be a good way to keep them going. Another one that I see a lot that people really, really seem to enjoy is Chains of Devastation. Using Chain Lightning, casting Chain Heal makes your next Chain Lightning instant cast and deal 50% increased damage, so really good for cleaving, like, you know, jungle and that. And casting Chain Lightning makes your next Chain Heal instant cast and consume no mana. Basically, a really great way to heal your your buddies. It's just very good for when you're stacked as well. Let's say you're playing a lot of Thunder, or something where you're playing with a melee. This is a really great way of handling all the damage, especially into jungle cleave and stuff like that. I think this is really, really useful. So there's multiple things you can go for. I personally think Skybreakers is good. Get that up there first, and then focus on the rest. So before I continue, I just want to talk about stats very quickly. Now, stats is something that people ask me. I missed about it last time. There are multiple things you can do. In my opinion, I think versatility is at the top. Then you have haste equals critical strike. I think they're pretty good. Maybe with haste favoring, depending on what build you go, but I think both are very, very good. And then obviously mastery, etc., etc. So the reason why we're going back to haste, and I think it works well with Skybreakers, is that obviously more haste, the more ticks of your dots, the more damage you do, the more chances for Lava Surge, and etc., etc. I think haste is very good. It also means you can get damage out, you can get CC out, you can get a lot of things out quickly before they, become troublesome. So I think this is why it's important. You could also go Critical Strike, that is affected by Controller Lava, but if they're not dispelling it, then it becomes a bit of an issue. You've already got a lot more crit as an Elemental Shaman anyway, 250% crit. And obviously with Skybreakers, you've got more crit on there for your flame shocks anyway. So it's kind of outweighed. I think I prefer Haste. It makes it more enjoyable to play. I'd much prefer to play a Haste build because, the crit build was fun and everything, but taking so long to get Lava Burst out kind of sucked. So hopefully that answers your question about what sort of stats I want to go for. It's very, very enjoyable to play with more Haste. Let me know what you think, whether you prefer crit versus Haste. I'd be really interested to know. The next thing I want to go over is comps. Now, the great thing about Elemental Shaman as opposed to playing Enhanced Shaman is that Elemental Shaman works with almost anything. It is such a versatile class that you can literally go queue up and play with anything. In my opinion, some of the best comps at the minute will be, for Elemental Shaman, will be Ellie Mage, Ellie Frost Mage, or Ellie Fire Mage. They work really, really well. I think Thunder as well is really, really strong. Thunder with a Resto Druid. It depends on your playstyle, obviously, whether you enjoy that, but it has a lot of pressure at the minute. You could play Ellie Ret. You could play Ellie Warlock as well. LSD's got some real firepower to it. Even the Affliction variant could also pump a lot of damage. Ellie Shadow Priest as well, really, really good. Ellie Boomkin. All of these comps, a lot of the wizard comps are really, really good. And you could even play Ellie Monk. All of these things tends to work. So to be honest, it doesn't matter what's out there, you can just play with it. As long as they don't sort of stun as well as your the kill target too much, too often, so they DR your lasso, it's perfectly fine. Anything can work with Elemental Shaman because we have such strong offensive purges, huge damage, consistent damage, okay CC, and just a lot of utility. We just work with anything. Let me know which comps you've tried and the ones that you find most enjoyable. Personally, for me, I prefer the wizards. I think wizard cleaves are sort of my sort of preference because in those instances, I'm not the target, and I love not being the target. So that's comps. I want to go over a few tips and tricks now that I think will be really, really useful. One thing I want to talk about is Fleshcraft and avoiding kicks. Now, this is something that I've done a lot. If you're getting to low health and you're getting trained by double melee and there's a bit of a problem, you can get most of their kicks out of the way. But if you get most of their kicks and they end up kicking your healing surge as well, and you get locked on nature, instantly press Fleshcraft, because with ultimate form, it really can save your life. It gives you the moment, or gives your healer the moment, to get out of CC and then get you on the healing track, and normally you can survive that way. It's a really good way to bait kicks on your nature spell, let them kick it, and then instantly kick Fleshcraft, because they have no way to stop it. Only a kick can stop Fleshcraft. Whatever you do, don't do it the other way around, because they will just stun your heal cast, and then you're dead. So make sure you go for the heal cast first, and if you can fake it, great. But if you're really desperate for heals, let them kick the healing surge straight into a Fleshcraft, and you're going to be totally okay. You can also press BM with this, but to be honest, I would think just get the single global, the Fleshcraft out is most important. Obviously, there's a lot of synergy with what you're working with, and making sure that you're in the right position really, really helps. Something I've noticed is that positioning is very key for Elemental Shaman. If you're playing in a Wizard's Cleave, and you're playing threes and whatnot, there are lots of things that you can do to kind of really help your teammates. Positioning yourself in between their healer and the enemy, like whether or not it's a enemy wizard, so like a MLP, like a Mage Lock, or Shadow Play, or God Comp, any of those, whether you got the double, Shadow Priest, Mage, Warlock, Shadow Priest, etc. Anything like that, make sure that you're sort of like using your pillars and everything like that. But if there's like a double melee, you can stand in between them and their healer and zone their healer out really hard. You can do a lot to stop them that way, because when you're stood there, they have to be always aware of your 12-second wind shear. You can stop a lot of healing, you can stop mind games, you've got grounding totem, everything. And if you stand between them and kind of really zone the healer out, you're in a really good state. And I think that's a great thing that you can do with Elemental Shaman. Another good thing is just to be aware of your flame shocks. Now, flame shocks don't last for very long. In PvP, they start off at about 12 seconds and go up to about 19 seconds. Obviously, with your fire Ellie out, that really is buffed. So make sure that you're aware of your flame shocks and how the spread is. You also want to be aware of when you press Primordial Wave and who has a flame shock, because Hex does not get rid of your flame shock. So if you press Primordial Wave and you hex the healer and the healer's got a flame shock on, you're going to have a lava burst that's going to break that. So be mindful of where you're putting your Primordial Waves, how you're spreading your flame shocks, and how you're doing it. I think it's always good to triple dot, but just make sure that when you're going for damage like that, and whatever CC you've got out on there, make sure that if you put the hex on the healer, that you're going to be aware that it's going to break when you press lava burst. Another simple trick that you can do is that if you want to waste your Echoing Shock into a Stormkeeper, you can do. It does actually absorb the second charge, but it is 1 global to get the 2 Stormkeepers, or I guess 2 in a way, but it's a prepared 2 for Stormkeeper to get out if you want to do something else. So that's a really good, useful one. Don't be too worried about having to use Echoing Shock with your Earth Shock. You can use Echoing Shock with a Lava Burst if you want. It's not wasted at all. The extra damage is actually key because it's not reduced, it's still double damage. And I think that's really, really useful. Just a general arena tip. Being aware of the enemy's CC chain, for example, against Priest, there's a lot of Priests, and when they run towards you, you can actually stop a lot of fears and everything by pre-tremoring. Just keep an eye on people and try and use the awareness that you can when you're not the, for example, if you're not the target, being aware of how people can use their CC. If you see a Priest running towards someone, be prepared, save the global to press Tremor, especially if it's on your healer. If you're there, make sure that you're pre-tremoring the fear because it will completely and totally throw them off their game. Also make sure that you don't stack with your healer when you're against a Priest, because there's nothing better for a Priest or anyone that has a fear for you to get a double fear on both the Shaman and the healer, because there's no way they're ever getting out of that CC and someone has to trinket, which is totally wasted. I want to do it. The last final tip I want to give is a trick for Static Field Totem. Now there's a lot of places where people can run over edges. Placing your Static Field Totem on an edge, like for example in the Robodrome, when you're running up the ramp and you jump off, the melee can actually run off, but they get pulled back up. They get knocked back up, and actually, maybe if you put it in the right place, right at the edge, and I still have to test this, you can force them into a loop where they're actually unable to stop falling off and they can't kill the totem. Obviously, they'll, most melee have ranged attacks now, like a Heroic Throw or Judgment or whatever, and that will eventually kill the totem. But it's a really great way of trapping people and getting away. It especially works well if you're kiting with your healer and your healer's in trouble, or you're kiting with your Warlock or Mage or whatever, and you need to kind of keep the melee off them. It's perfect for them. Also, make sure that you let your teammates know that you're going to do it. So being in voice and letting them know that you're going to do it, because otherwise it's wasted if the Warlock just stands in the middle of it, or the Mage just stands in the middle of it and they don't do anything. But if you try and catch them on these lips with Static Field Totem, it's perfect. Just be aware that, like the old Heroic Leap, that if there's no path available, if you're not on the same level that you're putting the totem, it actually doesn't work. You can't put a totem up from, let's say you're on the ground and going up to the top. I have tested this. I don't know whether this is a bug or not, but just be aware that you can't do it unless it's on the same level as you. So you have to be up there. Alright guys, and that's the end of this video. That's everything. I've tried to be as concise as I possibly can, give you as much information as possible, all the stuff that I've learned, and hopefully it's useful for you. If you want to know other tips and tricks, anything else, anything that you want to know from me, please do let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if this has been useful to you. Let me know if this has answered your questions, and if it hasn't, ask me, because I always get back to you in the comments, and it's my pleasure to help you. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful journey going forwards as Elemental Shaman. I'm loving it at the minute, and I hope that you guys will too. Please do like and subscribe. It really helps. Please help me continue to grow this channel. More Shaman content to come, more 3s games. I'll do 2s as well. I'll do commentaries that will hopefully answer any questions that you might have, really help you try and push the rating that you deserve. And otherwise, guys, just have a wonderful rest of your July. Go and watch, go and support the AWC, go and support all of the arena stuff. Let's get WoW PvP up there, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.